Sup with it, guys? You got excellent name here, coach of the Aussie Kangaskhan, and I'm here with my ASL Season 5 Draft Breakdown. Definitely really happy with how the team ended up. It's got a few flaws, but just the strength of my top picks really make up for it, I feel. First pick I've got here is Landorus T, aka T-Bone. Very versatile Pokemon. The only set it can't really run is Cleric. Other than that, it's going to be able to run whatever I really want it to be. The three main sets that I'm going to be running would be Choice Scarf, Setup Sweeper, and Defensive with either Defog or Stealth Rock support. Unfortunately, I'm not Z Crystal on this Pokemon because you can only run one Tier A Z Crystal one, but I felt like Deoxys Speed would be a better choice for that on this instance because I feel like Flynium Z is a bit overrated on this Pokemon. If the opponent can bait it out, then their grass types and bug types are still going to be walling for the most part, as long as they're running like Protect or something to beat out the flies. And as for Rockium Z, I can kind of deal with the flying types anyway with either Smackdown or Gravity on the set, so I didn't feel like it was too necessary. Other than that, it's just like a really big threat though. I can run like special or physical if I want to with stuff like Earth Power Earthquake or Focus Blast, Super Power. I've got Knockoff, I've got U-Turn to pivot, just a lot of options here, so it's going to be really unpredictable for my opponent, and I'm going to be able to adapt my set to whatever they're going to bring. So definitely a solid Pokemon overall, and I'm definitely happy to have gotten this Pokemon. Next up is Deoxys Speed. Now Deoxys Speed is allowed in the ASL, this is because we ended up feeling like it wasn't as good as people made it out to be. We kind of had like a test trial for a couple off seasons and it didn't end up performing all that well. Granted, that could have just been the coaches using it wrong, and I'm tending to think that it would be because this thing is actually an absolute monster. Don't let that 95 special attack confuse you at all. This thing will destroy teams. I can set up a nasty plot and then just with a Psychium Z Psycho Boost, I am nuking everything. There is very little that wants to take a Psycho Boost. Basically, if you're not a Chansey or a Steel type or Dark type, you're dropping this thing. Unfortunately, you don't get access to Flamethrower or Fire Blast with this Pokemon, so I'm gonna have to run like Focus Blast if I want to break through the Steels, which is a bit of an issue, but that's what the rest of the team is there for. I can definitely see myself getting a lot of kills with this Pokemon. And Nasty Plot isn't even really the only set that I could be running with this. I can just as easily run like a Choice Band or Choice Spec set to just come in Revenge Kill or nuke things if I want. It gets access to Extreme Speed, Knockoff, and Pursuit, so I've got plenty of options there. I can also run the infamous Suicide Lead set that it's made its mark in Ubers with. It's definitely the best Suicide Lead in my opinion because it gets access to the fastest Taunt in the game, and it's almost guaranteed to get at least Stealth Rocks and one layer of Spikes every time because of how fast it is. So yeah, it also, with access to Pressure, another set that I can be running is Sub Protect Pressure Stall. Its defensive stats aren't even that bad, 90, 90, 50. It's not going to be taking hits super well, but with such a high speed, I can kind of just outspeed most things and recover without any speed investment, so it can be like a niche defensive Pokemon if I really wanted it to. But yeah, for the most part, I'm going to be running that Nasty Plot C set, I think. But yeah, definitely really good Pokemon, and I'm surprised that it fell to round 2. Speaking of surprisingly falling down, we got Mega Kangaskhan as well. This thing fell all the way to round 3, and I'm honestly quite surprised, but I'm definitely happy to have gotten nice VB the mascot. It's not quite as strong as it used to be with the Parental Bond nerf. It's now 1.4 times instead of 1.25 times instead of 1.5 times. And with 125 attack, it's not going to be as strong as stuff like Mega Medi, but it's still definitely a threat to be reckoned with. Base 100 speed is no slouch, but the big factor that you need to consider is those defensive stats. It's going to be taking hits like a champ, so unlike a lot of the other Megas, I can actually run defensive on it quite effectively. I've got pretty beefy wishes that I can be passing into stuff like the Landorus and the Metagross that I've got down the line. So it's definitely a solid option there. I unfortunately can't run Seismic Toss but I'm still going to be doing a lot of damage with like Power Up Punch setting me up to +2. Return, I've got Sucker Punch and Crunch for the Ghost types. I've got Thunderbolt, Thunder Punch for the other things. I've got Hammer Arm or Low Kick for the Steel types, so I'm not really walled by much. I can deal with pretty much anything that I need to deal with this Pokemon. So it's definitely like very versatile threat that's really hard to take down, really hard to counter. The big thing is going to be the Rocky Helmet chip and the Rough Skin chip. That's going to be the end of this Pokemon. But as long as I play well, I will see this Pokemon putting in the finest of work. Anyway, moving into the tier B slots, we have Metagross. Metagross is an absolute monster and has been since Gen 3. It's not quite as good as it used to be, but it's still definitely really solid. Super good attack stats and quite a formidable defense and special defense. So I can run stuff like agility and a plethora of different coverage moves. That's going to be the real issue though, is full move slot syndrome, but just so many different options that I can be running. I've got access to Pursuit to trap the psychic types, I've got access to agility to boost my speed, Stealth Rots to, have that as an option, I've got Trick, I've got Toxic, just all kinds of different options, and that's not even mentioning all the different coverage moves I've got. It's just an absolute monster and it's going to be a real joy to prep with. Anyway, next up is Cool Cat Saves the Kids, aka Incineroar. This is my other Z move user, so it's definitely going to be putting in a lot of work, especially now that it has access to Intimidate. A Malicious Moonsault is not something that you want to be taking at all. It's definitely going to be hitting really hard here, so it's something that you need to look out for on the offense. It does get access to Swords Dance as well to boost that power. The main thing I'm going to be running is going to be that pivot set though, with Intimidate. It forms a really solid pivot core with Landorus. Landorus takes the fighting and ground type moves that Incineroar doesn't take, and in turn Incineroar takes all the ice type moves. The only issue is going to be the waters types, but there aren't too many physically offensive water types that I would need to be checking anyway, so I don't foresee it being too big of an issue. Outside of like Assault Vest sets, I've also got access to Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, Roar. So definitely a lot of different options to be running on the defensive side as well if I don't want to run Assault Vest. So yeah, definitely gotta look out for this Pokemon. Very solid threat on both the offense and defense. Anyway, next up is my Grass type, Roserade, aka Elflet. This is giving me another option for spikes, and more importantly, it gives me access to T-spikes. This is really good because I don't want to be forced into running spikes on Deoxys speed too often. I want that to be my main special threat. So just having this Pokemon frees that slot up for me. It's, in my opinion, one of the best electric type and one of the best fairy type checks in the game, because it just soaks up the hits really well with such a nice special defense stat. It gets access to reliable recovery and synthesis too. It gets Leech Seed so I can stall some people out. I've got Sleep Powder and Stun Spore to just annoy the team. But it's also a massive threat on the offense. Base 90 speed is no slouch. I can definitely effectively run a Scarf set. Life Orb's going to be doing a lot of damage, especially with Technician boosted hidden powers. A lot of different options to be running on this Pokemon as well. So very solid Pokemon overall. Next up, we've got Ninetales Alola, Icy McSpicy. Now this gives me Aurora Veil, and just look at the rest of the team and look how well supported Aurora Veil is for it. I've got Landorus T, I've got Deoxys Speed, I've got Mega Kang, I've got Metagross, I've got Incineroar, so many setup sweepers, and all of them are just getting that nice opportunity to set up behind a Veil. It's going to be very difficult to handle that, and it just gives the opponent something else to worry about. But this also gives me an option against weather. I now just have that nice hail to deal with like any rain or sand sweepers, so that just puts that off my mind too. It's a good Pokemon in its own right, just outside of Veil support too. Ice Fairy is both very solid offensive typings. So I've got access to like Moonblast and Blizzard's going to be hitting fairly hard. I can set up a Nasty Plot if I wanted to and start just doing some nice damage. It's not the strongest thing in the world, but it's definitely got enough power to be threatening some stuff, and it has a lot of different support moves too. I've got access to Roar, Hypnosis, Toxic. It's definitely like a fairly linear Pokemon comparatively, but does not mean that you can just ignore this Pokemon in prep. It's got like a lot to offer the team. At this point the draft kind of like starts to peter out a bit. I've got Blastoise here, not a Pokemon I was hoping to draft at the start of this, but I definitely needed a water type, and I also needed more hazard control, and Blastoise fit the bill perfectly for that. I did draft this Pokemon last season and it did fairly well for me in the games that I brought it, but it's not a Pokemon that I want to be bringing too often, but it's a Pokemon that I'll probably have to bring a fair bit more often than I want to. It's my only water type, so it's going to be important for checking the fire types and the ice types for the team. It's also my only spinner. My only other removal is Landorus T, which does not want to run Defog at all. But don't get me wrong, this is definitely a solid Pokemon. If you want to look at those defensive stats, it's going to be taking hits fairly well, but that special attack is not even that bad either. It's going to be able to throw off some nice Scalds and Ice Beams to really threaten the team. I've got access to stuff like Haze, Roar, Dragon Tail, Toxic, so I can shut down some sweeps and stuff. It's not something that you can just set up on. I've also got access to Mirror Code and Counter, so I can like catch some Pokemon off guard there if they want to try to break down this defensive wall here. So it's like not something that you can really just ignore, but it's also not something you can just brainlessly attack either. So it's definitely a good option. It's just not one that I necessarily want to bring too much. Same goes for my next Pokemon, Sliggoo, aka Goomy Booty. This is definitely a slept upon Pokemon here. Look at that special defensive stat. It's so huge, especially with an Eviolite boosting it, which I'm going to have all the time. Couple that with good abilities like Sap Sipper and Gooey, and this is going to be like a super sleeper Pokemon. It's unfortunately my only Dragon type. It's going to make my team a bit weaker to have this be my Dragon type, but it's definitely not something you can sleep on. It's got Draco, Meteor, it's got Ice Beam, it's got Sludge Wave, Thunderbolt, so it's going to be hitting decently hard with some good coverage moves, but most importantly it's going to just be there to take the water hits that my team doesn't want to take. It's going to take the grass hits that my team doesn't want to take. It's like super niche for sure, don't get me wrong, but it's still definitely a solid option in some matchups. It should not be ignored at all. Next up is Andy's son, the Electabuzz. Shout out to Brad Anderson, the commissioner of this league. This is exactly what you expect out of a fast electric type. It's got nice base 105 speed, it's got decent special attack, and it's got access to Volt Switch. That's about all you need. The things that Electabuzz has that sets it apart is a fairly respectable attack stat along with some really solid coverage, access to Cross Chop, the elemental punches, and power up punch even, just like makes this like have extra options, and more options is always a welcome bonus. It's also got pretty decent special defense and HP, so if I wanted to run an Eviolite, I could definitely use this as like a pseudo check to other electric types, and that's also a really big benefit for other electric types to be having, is good stats to switch in on Volt Switches. So this fits the bill there. It's got access to Thunder Wave, Sub, Toxic. I've got options here. It's not like the best Pokemon once again, but nothing from Tier C is going to be the best Pokemon. Electabuzz is definitely very solid for what it is. Anyway, next up is Gerda, the red-nosed Swalowdeer. This is definitely another just solid niche Pokemon here. Nice attack stat, pretty solid defenses. It's going to be a threat that you have to watch out for, otherwise it's going to sweep you. The classic set is of course the Bulk Up Drain Punch, Mac Punch set with whatever coverage I want, be it Knockoff, Ice Punch, Poison Jab. It's probably not going to be doing all that much else. I could run like Guts Flame Orb potentially, but I probably won't because then I'd have to sacrifice Eviolite. But yeah, it's going to be a niche thing in some matchups, but if I can pull it off, it's going to like do a lot of work against teams. It has the stats that it needs to accomplish its job, and that's about all you can really want from a Pokemon. Anyway, final Pokemon here is Spooklops the Duskmore. This is my obligatory spin blocker. I've got so much hazard stacking options, it's kind of like stupid to not run a ghost type. Even though obviously defog's a thing in this generation, you still do need to have that ghost type to stop the spins, otherwise it's just going to be a real pain in the ass, honestly. And yeah, just look at those defensive stats. HP is a bit low, but that just means Pain Split is better on it. So it's definitely going to be able to effectively come in on most spinners and just take whatever hit they want to go for. I'm also fairly strong. I've got access to some really solid coverage. I've got Earthquake, I've got the Elemental Punches. I've got some support options like Haze, I've got Will-O-Wisp I believe, I've got Taunt, I've got Toxic Trick. Just like a bunch of different options that I can run to shut down whatever their spinner may be. Once again, none of these Pokemon at the end are really going to be Pokemon I'm bringing all that often, but they're there, they're options for me to bring, and they're fairly good at what they do, and that's all that I can ask. For the lower tier Pokemon, generally I like to go for Pokemon that fulfill a small niche but do that well, rather than Pokemon that are likely to be decent at a lot of things, because the lower tier Pokemon are generally outclassed by higher tier Pokemon already. Anyway, let me know what you think of my draft and the video itself, and make sure to drop a sub if you liked the video. Peace out, guys.